My name's Patricia. I'm a Calgary-based artist that works between the performing, visual, and media art disciplines. While my maternal grandmother's Métis lineage traces back to the Riel Rebellion in Manitoba, we feel as a family really disconnected from this heritage. There's been an incredible loss of languages, culture, community. So I guess with that in mind, I tend to identify more as an ally. I try to inform myself, and I address social justice issues through my creative work. Actually, when I was young, I wasn't very interested in school at all. The sitting still, the focus, sometimes even the way it was taught was just uninteresting to me. And when I applied myself, I did very well, but unfortunately, as time went on, I didn't. And so my parents actually withdrew me from school, from high school, when I was 15. Yeah, there was a lot more emphasis in my family on working instead of continuing education. So that's what I did. I worked. I knew, though, that I wanted to be an artist. So I spent a number of years mostly volunteering to learn on the job. And then I, of course, had usually a few jobs in the service industry to pay the bills. And I just kept taking risks, you know, to get out there and produce my own work and learn on other people's projects. And by my early 20s, I was fortunate enough to have a career. But then I had a child, and I realized that any opportunities for career advancement were really stymied because I didn't have an education. And yeah, at that juncture, I decided to upgrade, and I decided I was going to university. And I can't say that I spent much time planning this out or thinking this out to be super practical. I just went ahead and figured out how to do it, and moved across the country with my son. And single parent, so, you know, had to work an awful lot. It took me longer to get my degrees. But I aimed to get a master's degree, and I graduated with an interdisciplinary master's degree. I really recommend extending one's education. It's difficult, and it's hard work. It's not easy. I know that I felt when I first entered, I call it university land, because it's its own little world, and I wasn't familiar with the norms and mores of that world. And I felt very much like a fish out of water, but I also felt like an infiltrator. You know, I was learning the master's tools, sort of thing. Yeah, you know, you're just exposed to and have access to so much information, and it certainly sharpens your critical thinking skills. You learn to research, assess, and sort of parse out the information that is coming at you. So I think there's a lot to be gained from an education, regardless of, you know, sort of outcomes. I think definitely for many people, it's the beginning of a career, and certainly that is practically sound. I'm in the arts, so that's a bit more precarious, and the value of that education becomes more about deepening your relationship with um, your practice and an understanding of how that may or may not fit into the world. Did not plan adequately for it. Um, I had to work a lot. It took me longer to get my degrees. And I took out student loans. So I'm deeply in debt. And I'll probably be paying that off for a long time. So there is a downside to doing this on your own. But I think there's more opportunities now to access sources of funding and support, or even advice on how to strategize and plan for the long term. And I would highly recommend talking to the agents at the schools, to people who are doing what you're interested in. Figure out how did they do it. Now there's even people representing government departments that you can talk to. Sort of really do your research and find those opportunities to both access resources and to help have some support planning for it. Well, now there is this program where if you sign up for, I think it's called a registered savings plan, education savings plan, where you can say as a family, you can put away money towards future education. But even if you just register it, you become eligible for the Canada Learning Bond, which is a tax-free $2,000 that the government contributes to your education. So that's helpful. I think combined though, if young people want to talk to their family about the programs that are out there that help you actually save for an education, that's going to probably be the most helpful. I can tell you that I know it's a common conception, and I also am quite aware that this is not often the case. These are very scarce resources, and most people don't have access to that kind of support. Because my family is so removed from that heritage, and we were very much immersed in a settler mindset, all the traditional knowledge has been lost, regrettably. Even for myself, when you first enter that world, it can be quite intimidating. Um, you know, from vocabularies to systems, like how does this work? What's expected of me? Um, you know, how do I meet those deadlines? Uh, the whole thing. It has its own sensibility, and it's a learning curve just to be in the environment. So I would encourage young people to really, find the courage to speak up, ask lots of questions, really engage with your professors and your fellow students, sharing ideas, discussing concepts, and the material that is in front of you can be super exciting and really rewarding. Every assignment is a new opportunity to have deeper understanding. You're really going to get from it what you invest in it. So it's worth being bold, and taking your chances. Explore what excites and interests you, instead of just living up to expectations of other people around you. To experiment, to try different things, by really taking the opportunity to explore what's out there, you're going to find your passion. And remember that it takes a whole lot of practice to be good at what you love. Don't get discouraged along the way. We all make mistakes, and we learn from failure. It's worth the perseverance to really commit to your interests. I think it is, regardless of the job prospects. And I know that that's the big one. It is difficult to launch a career without an education. Um, and I know there's a lot of people that are more practical minded than I am about what degree they're going to get and why. But I think that regardless of what departments you go into, what faculties, what your focus of study is, I do think getting an education is worth it. There's just so much misinformation and even lies that are passed off as facts these days. And I think at the very least, post-education, it's a process of learning to understand the information that is around you, how to research, how to assess, how to look at evidence, um, and regardless of what you study, you're going to learn something about history and how knowledge is accrued more formally, I guess. You're going to learn about how that relates to our present, how things came to be like they are right now. So it offers an awful lot of skill building that I think is very useful, especially in a democracy. Yeah, being an artist is certainly a challenging endeavor. Um, you have to do a lot of multitasking. Uh, you have to, gobble up every opportunity you have. It sometimes rains, and then it's an entirely, it's a total drought. But for me, it's very meaningful. I believe in the power of art. Uh, I believe in the way that art can reflect back at our society, can challenge, can reimagine. All of that is valuable. We don't prioritize those kinds of things in our lives. It's a very worker bee society, you know, where you either punch your card or you work your many jobs, or you spend all your time hoping to. There isn't a lot of emphasis put on, you know, sort of investigating the philosophical underpinnings of our society, reflecting on our relationships with one another, challenging the status quo, reimagining how else we can be. You know, these are attributes of being alive that are meaningful and you know, have us feeling and contemplating and envisioning. So to me, as difficult of a journey, you know, being in our creative professional is, and especially now during a pandemic, I mean, you know, wow, like we're just completely shut down. And we're last on the roster. We're an afterthought as an industry. There's a lot of lumps, you know, and there can be some hardship, but I find it incredibly satisfying. I learned mostly on the job for an awfully long time before I went to school. So I was a very mature student by the time I went to school. And I had already cultivated a number of habits in terms of my own process, which totally contradicted what is expected from you at school. So, you know, there were real challenges this way. I had to strategize differently. I'm a big fan of learning on the job because I think education gives you a whole toolbox, you know, of skills. But working with others and a lot of the arts, it depends what field you go into, but a lot of the arts are very collaborative and very community-based. And there's something so wonderful about the synergy of people coming together with their imaginations and their concerns and their opposition even. You know, I guess that saying, they say two heads are better than one. Well, I think that in fact a whole collective of people can really bring something to life that you wouldn't do on your own. So there's that attribute. At school, you're mostly working on your own. The community dimension is quite different. I mean, there is community on campus, but your projects you work on your own. And the arts, for many of us anyway, it's collaborative. And that is a whole different process. And I think that, you know, unfortunately, we generally do have to volunteer our time to get that experience. And I wish it was different, but the experience itself is both entirely worth it educationally, and learning how that process works. But it's also completely rewarding. It's harder when you're older, but when you're young, I think most people who are already working in the industry want to be in. are actually really willing and eager. You know, they want to pass on the tools of their trade. They want to offer insight. They are interested that you're interested, you know, and asking questions and taking chances, you know. You can't be stupid, you know. You may be naive, but you can't be stupid when you're learning. You just make it clear that's what's going on. You're learning, and a lot of people will come into your sphere and be willing to impart insights. I think that's maybe human nature. I think we all, as artists, can be a bit perfectionist. We will finish a project and not feel like it's finished forever. Like you can work on something forever, but you do learn to let go of what it becomes, because there is sort of, once something starts, it does build and develop, almost, you know, becomes its own creature. And so you work with that creature, and yes, of course, there's a lot of decision making going on, but at some juncture, I think every artist feels like they have to let it go and be what it is. Practice is really key. You just keep doing it. Just do it, 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 and don't stop. I'd say just, you know, with education, I'm maybe feel like I should reiterate that I really believe that continuing someone's education is fruitful. And ideally, you can plan for that and address some of the practical issues, which basically comes down to money, right? For all of us. There, there, there are routes you can go, and there are resources out there, and plugging into them is important. But if you're like me and you're on your own, and you know, you don't have access to those resources, you can still do this. You can do it. You know, really go out there and talk to people about how they did it, and talk to schools and the various programs that are out there. And it's not going to be easy, but I promise you, you can achieve this.